Hello students. So today we are going to talk about the VRM subject, that is the book 4 of FRM Part 1, the paying scheme and the contents in it, and how are we going to go about. So I'll quickly share my screen with you all so that I can share you the contents that I've prepared. Give me a moment. Yeah, right. So in book 4 of FRM Part 1, we are talking about two items. One is valuation and another is risk model. And these are the two things that we are going to focus on. Now, by valuation, what we mean, हम लोग को valuation करना आना चाहिए. Like we need to understand how are we going to calculate the present value. आज क्या वैल्यू है उस चीज का, एक बॉन्ड का, एक सिक्योरिटी का, एक एसेट का. आज क्या वैल्यू है, क्या मेट्रिक्स लगता है, व्हाट मेट्रिक्स आर यूज टू कैलकुलेट द वैल्यू ऑफ दैट सिक्योरिटी. Either it can be a bond, it can be an equity, it can be an asset, it can be any derivatives such as futures, options, swap. तो सबका क्या वैल्यूएशन टेक्निक्स है एट अ सर्टेन पॉइंट ऑफ टाइम, वो हम लोग सीखेंगे. सपोज by valuation I mean, suppose we have entered into a contract, into a derivatives contract, 6 months futures contract है. Now after 3 months you want to know वो contract का उस 3 months में value क्या चल रहा है. So वो 3 months में उसका वैल्यू निकालने के लिए what metrics do you need to calculate the value at that point of time of your portfolio. ये सब्जेक्ट हम लोग को वो सिखाता है. And what about risk models? Now, as the subject is all about risk, we need to understand how the risk models work. How can we use these models to predict future metrics, the metrics that we need to value securities. लाइक इंटरेस्ट रेट, फ्यूचर में क्या इंटरेस्ट रेट होगा, उसका रिस्क मॉडल क्या है, उसका उसके लिए डिफरेंट मॉडल्स बने हुए हैं. फ्यूचर में वोलेटिलिटी क्या होगा, उसके लिए डिफरेंट मॉडल्स बने हुए हैं. सो दिस रिस्क मॉडल्स आर यूज्ड टू डिटरमाइन द फ्यूचर एस्टिमेट ऑफ द metrics that we need to value securities. So this is the whole subject about. Now this subject carries 30% weightage in your FRM Part 1 examination, which is the highest weightage with FMP. The first two subjects carry 20% each. Okay. So by the weightage, you know how important this subject is going to be. And in this subject, we see 16 different readings right now. These readings have been subdivided into different categories by me. We can see see those categories in here. So the first three chapters are dedicated to measurements of risk. So what are different measurements of risk? We can calculate risk using different uh, measurements like standard deviation, value at risk, expected shortfall. There are other measurements such as second moment and the third moment of mean, fourth moment of mean, which is skewness and kurtosis as well. But standard deviation, VR, and expected shortfall are the main three metrics that have been covered in these three chapters, especially value at risk. And wherever जहां जहां वैल्यू एट रिस्क आएगा वहां वहां एक्सपेक्टेड शॉर्टफॉल आएगा ही. दोनों भाई भाई है, दोनों साथ में चलते हैं. सो in first chapter we are introduced with VR and expected shortfall. In the second chapter we learn different techniques how to calculate value at risk. In third chapter we are talking about volatility, aka standard deviation. तो volatility कैसे measure करते हैं, future volatility कैसे estimate करते हैं, what are different models that we can use to predict future volatility, उसके बारे में बात किया गया है. So first three chapters are dedicated to measurements of risk. Now coming to second set of chapters, which is dedicated to credit risk. In part 2 you will have a different subject, totally different subject for credit risk and measurement of risk. आपका market risk में चले जाएगा, but in part 1 ये जो अपने को introduce करा रहा है ये सबसे, so they are combined together in the same book. So in credit risk we have credit ratings as the fourth chapter, country risk as the fifth chapter, and credit models as the sixth chapter. क्रेडिट रेटिंग्स आपको you must have heard, you may have heard about ratings, downgrades, rating upgrades by CRISIL, ICRA in India. There are international credit rating agencies such as Moody's, S&P, S&Ps. So they all what they do is they analyze the credit worthiness of the issuer. By issuer we mean जिसको पैसे चाहिए. They analyze their credit worthiness and rate them. If they are rated good, which means they have a good credit worthiness, people can rely on them easily, and they can issue bonds uh, at a low cost compared to a issuer who has a very low credit rating. This credit ratings act as credit scores only. Like जैसे स्कोर अपने अपना क्रेडिट स्कोर जैसे आता है, like if my credit score is good, bank will be willing to lend me credit card, issue an credit card to me. But if someone's credit rating is bad, if my credit rating is bad, so credit score is bad, I'm not going to get any credit cards or personal loans to fund my needs. So this chapter is talking about credit ratings, how they rate, what metrics do they take, what are the ratings that have been assigned, that they assign to issuers, and there's internal rating and external rating as well. तो क्या difference है उसमें? Chapter 5 talks about country risk. So you must have heard government also lends and borrow, right? So how is government lending? They issue sovereign bonds, they issue from another government, they borrow from another government as well. So how much willing are the people of the country or the other countries government is willing to give the country money? Like India has a good credit relations with other companies. They if they try to issue debt, they raise debt, they can raise it in much easily when we compare it with Pakistan. Pakistan will be facing difficulty in raising debt because the economy is doing poorly. वहाँ पे political tensions बहुत ज़्यादा हो रखे हैं. Then due to acts of terrorism as well, तो ये सब के कारण the countries are not willing to lend Pakistan very easily to when compared to India. अब यही मैं बात करूँ चाइना का, तो when I compare China and India, तो China has greater credit power. They can borrow much easily compared to India because China का GDP, economic growth is everything is better than India at this moment, right? सो कंट्री रिस्क यही बता रहे कि कंट्री में क्या रिस्क होता है, कैसे क्या क्या रिस्क हो सकता है, विच वी नीड टू एनालाइज बिफोर लेंडिंग टू गवर्नमेंट, बिफोर इशूइंग, बिफोर बिफोर बाइंग एनी सॉवरेन डेट्स. तो chapter 5 is going to talk about those things. Chapter 6 talks about credit models. So as I mentioned, there will be different models which helps us predict future interest rates, the credit worthiness. So this chapter 6 is all about that. How are we going to measure the credit riskiness of a company? There's basic model, there's other different models as well, and different models which we are going to learn. So credit models उस chapter में है. इस chapter में credit models का बात किया गया है. Moving to chapter 7 and 8, it is about operational risk and stress testing. So chapter 7 belongs to operational risk. Chapter 8 talks about stress testing. Again, in part 2, you will have a separate book altogether for operational risk, dedicated to operational risk. But in here, it's in the same book because we are introducing operational risk to you. Now, what is operational risk exactly? Operational risk is your when there is an issue or error by people, by your processes, by systems in your day-to-day activities. Something which doesn't come under market risk or credit risk becomes operational risk. For example, cyber risk is also a part of operational risk, जो बहुत ही major issue निकल के आ रहा है अभी. Like there are many virus attacks, many hackers and phishing activities there, which are going on. By phishing, I mean phishing. It is a type of activity when you receive an anonymous mail, and when you click a link, all your data gets hacked, your computer gets hacked, and they can easily access your data. So this kind of operational risk अब day to day systems में कुछ error आ गया. There was a time in last to last year, I believe, when Microsoft was not working. So many companies came into halt because they totally rely on Microsoft to operate. Same can happen with Google. Other examples are internal frauds हो गया. There have been embezzlement of money, third party transactions हो रहा है, related party transactions हो रहा है. So these kind of risks fall under operational risk. तो उसके बारे में बात करेंगे in chapter 7. In chapter 8, this stress testing, it is a very much emphasized chapter because आज के दिन में we need to be prepared for the worst times, right? कुछ भी हो सकता है. नो वन प्रेडिक्टेड कि कोविड आएगा. आज 6 साल हो गया कोविड को, बट नो वन प्रेडिक्टेड 6 years बिफोर कि कोविड आएगा एंड ऐसा सिचुएशन होगा, लॉकडाउन हो जाएगा, देयर विल बी अ टोटल हॉल्ट थ्रू आउट द वर्ल्ड. तो ऐसा किसी ने सोचा नहीं था, बट हुआ. इट वाज एन एक्सट्रीम कंडीशन, राइट? सो वी नीड टू बी प्रिपेयर फॉर सच काइंड ऑफ एक्सट्रीम कंडीशन. स्ट्रेस टेस्टिंग हेल्प्स अस एनालाइज कि हम लोग का इफ आवर कंपनी इज going to be uh, operational when such stress events happen. आज आज के दिन में, like if my company is a NBFC, so we borrow and lend. So if the interest rates shoot up, if inflation rate shoot up, तो क्या होगा? अचानक से इंटरेस्ट रेट बहुत ऊपर चला गया, तो हम लोग इजीली बोरो नहीं कर पा रहे, हम लोग इजीली लेंड नहीं कर पा रहे, तो our operations will be affected. Suppose if I am a manufacturing company and there has been uh, increased very high inflation shot up in the raw materials that I need to produce the product that I produce. तो उसके कारण भी क्या होगा कि मतलब इन्फ्लेशन शॉर्ट अप हो गया, कॉस्ट शॉर्ट अप हो गया, तो हाउ कैन आई मेंटेन माय प्रॉफिट मार्जिन? इफ आई एम नॉट एबल टू मेंटेन माय प्रॉफिट मार्जिन, आई नीड टू फेस लॉसेस. अब वो लॉस कितना तक जाएगा, कहाँ जाएगा? Yes, we perform for these reasons. We perform stress testing. Stress. We need to put stress on certain metrics and certain events, and see if our company is going to survive that situation or not. Now, the fourth category is fixed income valuation. So we are talking more about models and stuff, the risk models and stuff in the first part. Now we are into valuation. So fixed income. What do we mean by fixed income? Fixed income are securities which have a certain amount of a certain income defined before the issue only. Like आज तो हम लोग banks में deposit करते हैं. So there's a certain rate of interest that we are going to get that we know already, right? So that becomes a fixed income. That interest income becomes a fixed income for us. Suppose companies issue bonds. They are corporate bonds, public bonds as well, which are issued by government. So those bonds, we know that what the rate of interest is going to be beforehand, right? So we know what the income is going to be. So that is a fixed income. Uh, an example of non-fixed income is equities, जिसमें अपने को पता नहीं capital appreciation कितना हो सकता है, dividends कितना announce करेगा company. So those are not fixed income because the income is not fixed there, it is variable. But for securities for which the income is predefined, it is known as fixed income securities. Now, the chapters that fall into this category are pricing of bonds. देख लो आप bonds कैसे price करते हो, what metrics do you need, how we know what the cash flows are going to be in the future. तो उसको present value उसका निकालना रहेगा. That is how we price the bonds. अब वो present value निकालने के लिए what rate you are going to be used. There are different rates like spot rates, forward rates, par rates, swap rates, जो chapter 10 में आपका cover होगा कि different types of interest rate क्या होता है. We can use interest rate as a continuous rate or discrete rates as well. Semi-annual rates होता है, annual rates होता है, quarterly rates होता है. तो वो सब चैप्टर 10 में आपका कवर होगा. चैप्टर 11 में आपको सिखाया जाएगा कि हाउ आर यू गोइंग टू कैलकुलेट बॉन्ड यील्ड. अब रिटर्न तो अपने को पता है क्या इंटरेस्ट आएगा, बट अपने क्या प्राइस में खरीद रहे हैं, क्या प्राइस में बेचते हैं, कैन बी डिफरेंट, क्या प्राइस. सो considering all the scenarios, what are different types of bond yields that we can calculate, how can we calculate bond yields, will be taught to you in chapter 11. Chapter 12 and 13 duration might seem little unknown to you कि duration मतलब क्या हो गया. Duration is तो मतलब time का बात होता है ना. It is time, but it measures the sensitivity of the price of your bond that you hold, that is fixed income security that you hold, against the interest rates. So if the interest rate changes, how is my price, how much is going to be, my price is going to be changed. तो चैप्टर 12 में इसका बात किया गया ड्यूरेशन का. So and key rate duration is something more advanced version of duration. Duration is calculated. There are some drawbacks for duration. That is why we introduced key rate duration as well. It talks about interest rate sensitivity during different time periods. So there can be a bond. क्या है? Bond can be of different tenors. Like by tenor we mean 6 month 6 months का bond भी हो सकता है, 1 year का bond भी हो सकता है, 5 year का bond भी हो सकता है, 10 20 30 years का भी bond होता है, right? So in chapter 12 we use only single value for all the tenors. बट चैप्टर 13 बोलता है वो सिंगल वैल्यू यूज करना गलत है, क्योंकि तुम्हारा जो 6 मंथ का बॉन्ड है दैट विल बी अफेक्टेड डिफरेंटली कंपेयर टू 30 ईयर का बॉन्ड, राइट? क्योंकि ड्यूरेशन विल बी डिफरेंट, राइट? सो की रेट ड्यूरेशन हेल्प्स यू मिटिगेट दैट कि मतलब फॉर डिफरेंट टेनोर्स फॉर डिफरेंट पीरियड्स यूज different duration bonds for a portfolio. So this is fixed income valuation. Now last but not the least is option valuation. इसमें 3 चैप्टर्स है, चैप्टर 14 15 एंड 16. फॉर ऑप्शन वैल्यू, फॉर व्हाट आर इज ऑप्शंस, पहले तो ये जान लो. ऑप्शंस आर derivatives which whose values relies on an underlying asset. So there are two types of options: call option and put option. Call option gives you a right to buy a security at a future time period. Put option gives you a right to sell a security at a future time period. Now, when there's a call option, when you buy a call option, you are assuming that you are predicting that prices are going to increase. और मैं आज प्राइस लॉक इन कर लेता हूँ. सपोज there's a stock A जिसका प्राइस is ₹50 currently. You are expecting कि वो 60 से ऊपर जाएगा, 60 से ऊपर जाएगा. So you locked in a price at a strike price of 60 after 3 months, and then you expect the price to increase. If prices go above 60, like 70 हो गया, so you will be happy to buy that stock at ₹60, the locked in price, and immediately earn a profit of ₹10, right? खरीद के 60 में 70 में बेच देंगे. But what if price does not go above 60, price remains at 55? Then in call option you can deny to buy that product, buy that security and let it lapse. कि नहीं भाई मैं तो नहीं बाय करूंगा, 60 में ज्यादा मैं क्यों बाय करूं, मैं मार्केट से 55 में खरीद लूंगा. So there's an option, it gives you a right to buy, there's no obligation to buy, right? So these are this is a call option. For this call option you need to pay a premium क्योंकि you are buying a right, right? So you need to pay a premium initially कि हाँ भाई तुम ये ₹1 रख या ₹2 रख, बट मेरे को ये राइट देना तुम इन फ्यूचर. I can buy or I cannot buy. It depends on the price movements. And vice versa with put option. You are betting कि price गिरेगा. So 50 का stock you are planning to sell it at 40. You expect 40 से भी नीचे जाएगा. So you have entered into a put option by paying a premium. And you expect 40 से नीचे जाएगा, but 40 से नीचे नहीं गया. So you can lapse the policy क्योंकि you can sell in the market at a higher price if 40 से ऊपर है price. But अगर 40 से नीचे चला गया, 31 32 चला गया, you can buy from the market and sell it to that person and immediately earn a profit of 9 or 8 rupees respectively. So these are options. और different types of options होते हैं. There's American option, there's European option, there are different exotic options as well, जिसका brief introduction है, but we are going to majorly focus on American and European option. And in chapter 12, 15 and 16, in chapter 14, 15 and 16, 14 में बात की है binomial tree का. Binomial tree is option valuation method. ये आपको chapter FRM part 2 में it will be used for इंटरेस्ट रेट मूवमेंट प्रेडिक्शन एज वेल. बट यहाँ पे ऑप्शन कैसे वैल्यू होता है, तो या तो इस ये प्रेडिक्ट करता है कि ऑप्शन दो जगह ही जा सकता है, या तो ऊपर जाएगा, जो सिक्योरिटी प्राइस है या तो ऊपर जाएगा या गिरेगा, तो उसका प्रोबेबिलिटीज लेके, उसका इंटरेस्ट रेट लेके इट कैलकुलेट्स द वैल्यू ऑफ द ऑप्शन इन चैप्टर 14. चैप्टर 15 इज ब्लैक शोल्स मर्टन मॉडल, BSM, ब्लैक शोल्स मर्टन मॉडल. It talks about it gives you it is more advanced version of binomial tree using normal distribution, standard normal distribution parameters, standard normal and log normal distribution parameters. And this is an advanced level of model which is currently used in many places in many companies to calculate the value of the option. ये हम लोग सीखेंगे, बट उसके पहले अपने को प्रायर नॉलेज पिछले चैप्टर्स का लगेगा, इसलिए आई एम नॉट गोइंग इनटू डिटेल ऑफ चैप्टर 15. एंड चैप्टर 16 इज Greeks. Similar to duration, which is interest price movement of a bond to interest sensitivity, Greeks are price movement of an option to different metrics. So it can be interest, it can be price of the underlying security, it can be volatility, it can be uh, yeah, it can be volatility, interest rate, it can be time to maturity as well. So वो sensitivities के बारे में chapter 16 में सीखेंगे. So this is how the whole chapter book 4 is split into 5 different categories. First is measurement of risk, second is credit risk, third is operational and stress testing, fourth is fixed income valuation, fifth is option valuation. So pretty simple, right? मतलब 5 different categories से सीखना है, but yeah, there are 16 chapters, but these are good, मतलब interesting. Now there are 2 different sources. One is GARP material, another is Schweizer notes. We are going to learn from Schweizer notes, and if something is not covered in Schweizer notes, I will teach you separately using GARP material. So you don't need to worry on it. But Schweizer note is the one that we are going to prefer. Kaplan Schweizer. So yeah, and classes will happen on weekly basis. Timings can be different, but weekly classes हो रहे हैं, and notes will be provided, and it will be little unstructured, but it is used for revising purposes. And classes में properly notes लिखाए गए हैं. You can use those for revision purposes. Those are very good, I believe. So please write when I am dictating. It is going to be helpful when you revise. So this is how that's all from me. This is how the structure has been split. So 30% weightage hai. All the best. Welcome to FRM curriculum. You're gonna love this subject. They are very interesting and intriguing, thought provoking. So yeah, that's all from my end. Thank you and all the best.